The Art of Presentation, Your Competitive Edge by Ray Hall, PhD, and Jim Stovall. I'm your narrator, Rich Germain. Chapter 1, Public Presentations as a Performing Art by Ray Hall, PhD. Presenting is an art form that is created by you. You are the artist and the performer. The performance that you create, the scenery, the picture that you evoke with your words, touching the heart and soul of those who receive it, is your audience. They are the ones who will evaluate your creation, just as any art form is evaluated by those who view it, or in this case, listen to it. Presenting in public is an art form because it comes from you, an individual who possesses your own individual style. You create the stage, the scenery, and the characters as you envision them, not as someone else would envision them. The stage and the characters are ones that you and only you create that will make it a great performance. You are the artist, so you have the opportunity to make your creation one that will move your audience to a standing ovation, not one that puts it to sleep. It is not a performance that you are copying from someone else. It has to be authentically you, the author and creator of your own art form. And we don't want to be someone we are not. We want to be our own creative self, because it is me who is the artist, the one who is creating this masterpiece. However, we do not want our performance to be a reckless one, to show off or to stage act. Rather, our performance must be one that is well prepared. We must learn about the elements that will give us the confidence to be the best public presenter that we can possibly be. On the other hand, it must also be creative and inspirational. Why are there so many poor public presenters? Why are so many public presenters so poor at what they do? I find it interesting that among the poorest public speakers I have had the misfortune to experience are those who are pastors, who give sermons to their congregations on Sunday morning, politicians who are striving to obtain an important political office, professionals who speak at state and national conferences and conventions to inform us of the results of their research, or invited speakers who present their opinions on important subjects. One would think that individuals in important positions would speak in such a way that we would not have to struggle to hear and understand what they are saying. What are the primary problems that prevent audiences from hearing and understanding what they are saying? They include, among others, 1, the fact that they are speaking at speeds that exceed the human central nervous system's ability to comprehend spoken speech. 2, when speech is spoken at high rates of speed, it becomes impossible for speakers to form the sounds of speech within individual words that allow for them to be articulated as whole words that, in turn, form sentences. 3, the microphone is misused. That is, the speaker does not know how to use a microphone so that it is allowed to perform as it should. 4, the speaker is obviously not prepared to speak in an organized and confident way. And 5, many other problems that prevent public speakers from being as good as they might otherwise be. This chapter provides information on public speaking as a performing art. It is presented in such a way that the next time you are asked to speak on stage before an audience, you will not reveal the difficulties that so many others have when they are handed a microphone and asked to, "Please say a few words to the audience." Whenever I am asked to present before an audience, I freeze. Most people I have spoken with call it stage fright. Why do I become so frightened? Researchers from Chapman University conducted a survey on American fears, which examined fears and anxieties that Americans frequently reveal across a variety of scenarios, including fear of bugs, snakes, walking alone in the dark, death, clowns, vaccinations, ghosts, drowning, and others. They even compared fears and anxieties between political parties, but that is not the topic that we are discussing here. It is interesting to note that significantly greater than the fear of heights, bugs and snakes, drowning, falling from a great height, vaccinations, claustrophobia, flying, zombies, darkness, ghosts, and even death, is the fear of speaking in public. This phenomenon has been discussed for many years, but good research in that area has not really substantiated this phenomenon before. In one survey, people were simply asked to name, off the top of their head, some fears that they have. The interesting finding is that more of them mentioned speaking in public than death. According to Chad Schultz, this would seem to imply that speaking in public is something that is more presently pressing on people's minds. In other words, people may be actively fearing public speaking more than they actively fear death, because presenting a speech may be something they are facing currently rather than in the future. Why do people fear speaking in public? Whatever the reason, it is interesting and revealing that people actively fear speaking in public. That is, holding a microphone near their mouth and standing before an audience on a stage to give a presentation. Why? Probably one of the major reasons is that when a person is standing on a stage holding a microphone so that everyone can hear all of their words clearly, they have found themselves in the uncomfortable position of being absolutely vulnerable to everyone in the audience. Their ability to speak, their manner of dress, their choice of words, their poise, their mannerisms while on stage, and more. That is, they are at the will of the audience that will appraise them and judge them in their own time and in their own way. That does tend to make those who have had little or no experience speaking in public feel quite vulnerable. One of my most embarrassing moments involved one of my first attempts at speaking in public. Except in this instance, I was speaking before my friends in a high school classroom. At that time, I was a severe stutterer and was unfortunately required to take a course during the fall semester of my junior year in high school entitled Public Speaking 110. On the first day of class, our teacher asked each one of us, in turn, to stand beside our desk and introduce ourselves and tell about something that we did during the summer. As each student's turn came, and she or he stood by their desk, gave their name, and fluently told of an adventure or some amusing event that they experienced during the previous summer, I became increasingly nervous. Being a severe stutterer, I could not remember speaking a complete sentence to anyone, let alone speaking before a classroom of students who were my peers. The worst part of the situation was that they all knew me, knew that I stuttered, and knew that I would fall apart when it came to be my turn. As the students behind me told the class their name and told the story about their summer, and my turn drew nearer, my throat began to tighten, my face began to become rigid, I blushed, and then I panicked. When it was my turn, I stood beside my desk and started to say, "My name is," but all that I could utter was ma, trying desperately to say "my name is." I finally quit trying and sat down at my desk with my face in my hands, trying not to look at the other students. I heard quiet snickering among them, and the teacher simply said, "Thank you, Raymond," and went on to the next student, who spoke with confidence and fluency. I was terribly embarrassed that I had done this to myself. I knew that I would not be able to speak in public, but I was required to do just that. My teacher required it, and I had failed. Public speaking terrified me, and I had let it embarrass me in front of my classmates. I had experienced a true moment of stage fright. I never wanted to place myself in that situation again. But throughout that semester, I had to give prepared speeches before the class, and each time I prepared one and gave it, interestingly enough, I became more fluent. By the 10th presentation that semester, I was nearly fluent and became aware that I was almost enjoying the experience of standing before my audience, my public speaking class, and presenting a speech. Practice makes perfect, as they say, and in this case, it was working. By the time I had graduated from college and was a professional in the field of communication sciences and disorders, I was speaking fluently and was becoming a sought-after public speaker on the topic of the art of communication. I had reached a point in my life when I was truly enjoying getting up before an audience and attempting to wow them with what I had to say. In order to break the ice with an audience and to give me a sense of balance as I stand on stage, I usually say, "I have truly looked forward to being here, and I know I will enjoy talking with you." Then I say, with enthusiasm, "Give me a stage, a spotlight, a good microphone, and an enthusiastic audience, and I'm a happy boy." And I say it with conviction. Not anticipation and fear. I mean it. I know that it sounds rather self-serving, but it works, and it helps to warm up the audience and me. Now let's look at the problem and the solution. The problem with presenting in public, however, is that we, for better or for worse, are exposing ourselves to an audience, no matter how large or small, who can independently pass judgment on us and our ability to present ourselves before them on what we say and on how we say it. But with experience, we can develop tougher skin and get over that feeling of vulnerability. Remember, one way or another, we do survive. As I said in the book, The Art of Communication, we all become nervous before going on stage to speak. Being nervous helps us to remain on top of our game. If we aren't nervous, we probably won't do our best job. Remember, you are only as good as your performance, and public speaking is, again, a performing art. And we won't perform to our best ability unless we are nervous to at least some degree. As Mark Twain once said, there are two types of speakers, those who are nervous and those who are liars. I have heard actors admit that if they ever find themselves not being nervous before a performance, it is time to quit. I want to be a great presenter of speeches. So what are the characteristics of those who present well? What do I have to do in order to be one of those? I recall attending sessions of a Dale Carnegie public speaking course when I was a senior in high school. It was part of my attempt to rid myself of my stuttering without actually having speech therapy. One evening, we were each to give a 10-minute speech on a topic that might be of interest to the rest of the group. I don't think that any in that Dale Carnegie course that was comprised of a mixture of working or soon-to-be working professionals, along with some high school and college students, were interested in what any of the rest of us had to say as we spoke before the rest of the class. Everyone was so nervous that I doubt any in the class actually listened as we delivered our presentations. One of the members of the class was a young woman from my high school whom I admired from afar for some time. She was beautiful, graceful, and full of charm. I thought she was wonderful and wondered why someone like her would be in a class on public speaking. She was the type of young woman who would cause a group to cease all conversation just by entering the room, because every eye would be on her as she walked through. As her time came to stand before the class to give her 10-minute speech, she walked to the front of the room, stood silently before the class for a few moments, began to quietly say a few words, and then she suddenly burst into tears and ran to her seat with her hands covering her face. I was stunned. Kathleen was afraid to speak before such a small audience. I initially felt sorry for her and even approached her to comfort her. But at the same time, I became filled with a feeling of comfort and a sense of empowerment that if she, whom I had admired for so long, was afraid to stand before that small audience and deliver her speech, then I knew that I could do it. She, through her response to her fear of presenting a speech in front of an audience, gave me the courage that in spite of my stuttering and fear of embarrassment, I could give my speech and do the best that I could. And I did. I stood before the class and gave my 10-minute speech without a hitch. To say the least, I was proud. And I even received a good grade for my presentation. I told Kathleen that if I could do it, she could do it too. And she did. Travis Bradbury writes about the 10 communication secrets of great leaders, which could be altered nicely to 10 communication secrets of great presenters, along with Sarah Lloyd Hughes, who writes about the 6 qualities of an inspiring speaker. Both authors reflect on similar but slightly different qualities of persons who are able to inspire and impact positively on others by their ability to communicate, including speaking before an audience of a few or thousands. What makes a great presenter or a great communicator? Here are a few qualities as outlined by Bradbury. Number 1, great presenters know their audience. Great communicators don't worry about sounding important, showing off their expertise, or boosting their own egos. They think about what people need or want to hear and how they can deliver the message so that people will be able to hear it and understand it. 2, they are experts in body language. Great communicators are constantly tracking people's reactions to what they are saying. They are quick to pick up on cues like facial expressions and body language because they know that that is the only feedback many people in the audience will give them. Great communicators use this feedback to tailor their message on the fly and adjust their communication style as needed. 3, they are authentic. Great communicators don't try to be someone they are not just because they have stepped onto a stage and picked up a microphone. There's a reason Mark Zuckerberg presented his proposal for his concept called Facebook to investors wearing a hoodie and blue jeans. Great leaders know that when they stay true to who they are, people gravitate to their message. 4, they speak with authority. Great communicators don't try to cover their backs by being ambiguous, wishy-washy, or unassertive. Instead, they stick their necks out and speak directly about how things are and how they need to be. 5, they speak to groups as individuals. In a nutshell, whether it's a huddle around a conference table or an overflowing auditorium, great leaders know how to work the room and make every person feel as if he or she is being spoken to directly. And remember, according to Bradbury, no one ever became a great leader without first becoming a great communicator. According to Lloyd Hughes in her book, How to Be Brilliant at Public Speaking, there are 6 qualities of an inspiring speaker. As she says, what is it that makes one public speaker inspiring and another just okay? Is it a list of rules or something else? According to her, everyone already has everything that is needed to become an inspiring speaker. Public speaking rules don't make an inspiring public speaker. Public speaking rules are saying, don't be yourself, be someone else. That doesn't make a great public speaker. A great presenter is a speaker who uses her or his own set of natural qualities, their own natural abilities that make them appealing in their own way. They are their own person, not a speaker who is following a set of public speaking rules. Martin Luther King Jr. did not give his I Have a Dream speech by following a set of public speaking rules. He spoke from the heart, using his own natural qualities and his own sincerity to get his message across to that vast audience. So what are the 6 qualities of an inspiring presenter? Lloyd Hughes gives us the following. 1, awareness. Awareness is the quality that allows you choice over your actions as a speaker. Developing awareness allows you to pick up on the behaviors that serve your audience and drop the ones that distract the audience from your message. 2, empathy. Most speakers start their speech preparation by asking themselves, what do I want to say? But an inspiring speaker starts from the perspective of their audience, seeking primarily to serve the audience's goals for attending the presentation. In doing so, the speaker becomes one who is listened to and respected. 3. Freshness. Freshness is the quality that gives zing to any talk. Freshness allows a speaker to be unique, spontaneous, and memorable. 4. Balance. Balance refers to the ability to judge which information goes in and which stays out. That is, what is important that will take your audience on an incredible journey through your ability as a public speaker. 5. Fearlessness. Fearlessness refers to the ability to go beyond your comfort zone in service to your audience. This is the quality that brings edginess and power to any public speaker, so the audience can see just how important the topic is to you. 6. Authenticity. The final and perhaps most important quality is the ability to be yourself, even if you feel rather vulnerable and even if it feels in some way inappropriate. Your authenticity connects to your audience's humanity and allows them to also be authentic. This is the quality that transforms public presentation from technically good to wow. Even if a speaker isn't 100% confident or doesn't catch 100% of traditionally good speaking technique, they can still inspire by developing these 6 qualities. You can inspire by being yourself rather than trying to be someone you are not. So how do we become a great presenter? The 3 Ps. Remember, there are no natural-born public speakers. We become a great public speaker with the 3 Ps. Those are practice and patience and perspiration. No one becomes a great presenter the first time in front of an audience. To assist myself in correcting my severe stuttering, I took it upon myself to enter every speaking opportunity I could find. I auditioned for parts in every play in high school and college. I captured every opportunity I could find that provided an outlet for speaking, either in club meetings or in public. The premise upon which I entered this arena of speaking in public was that I felt that if I experienced moments of success in speaking, those small successes might develop into bigger successes, and perhaps eventually I could develop into a fluent speaker. In other words, perhaps some success might breed further successes. I was reluctantly allowed by my high school and college speech coaches to enter competitions in debate, extemporaneous speaking, and oratory. I was particularly good at extemporaneous speaking because when the competitor is given a topic, she or he is then provided 60 seconds to develop the presentation, and the presentation begins without rehearsal. There's no time to become nervous or to fret about stuttering. As I entered college, I continued to place myself in situations that required speaking. During my senior year, among those places that required speaking was intercollegiate oratory, in which the competitors were to prepare and give 12 to 15-minute competitive orations from memory. The day of the state men's oratory competition, I was to drive to one of the large universities in our state of Kansas, about 90 miles away from our farm. It was winter, and it was snowing. After arriving and walking through a grassy field of mud and snowy slush, I finally arrived at the correct building. But the lower 1/3 of the pants of the new blue suit and my new shoes were covered with mud. I hurried to the room where the competition was being held, slowly opened the door, and found that there was still time to deliver my oration. I walked without hesitation to the front of the speaker's room, faced the judges and the other orators and their coaches who were seated near them, and without forethought began my 15-minute oration from memory. I was so concerned about being late and the appearance of mud on my shoes and the slacks, I did not have time to build any level of anxiety. If there were disfluencies, I tried to use them as pauses for purposes of emphasis. At the conclusion of my oration, I simply thanked the judges, walked from the room, and drove the 90 miles back to our farm in central Kansas. I was embarrassed by what I thought had been a poor performance. At about 9 p.m., the telephone rang and my mother answered. She said that my forensics coach wanted to speak with me. As I put the receiver to my ear, he was almost beside himself with excitement. He was informing me that I had won first place in the Kansas State Intercollegiate Men's Oratory Competition, the first time it had happened to anyone from our small college. It was difficult for me to believe what had just happened, that I was the best orator of the best from the colleges and universities in my state. It was a grand achievement in the life of a stutterer. Now let me tell you the final chapter in this story. At that point, my stuttering extinguished to the degree that I was essentially fluent most of the time, and I have been since that time. Everything seemed to boil down to the fact that my original plan was the best one. Success does breed success. That has been and continues to be my premise. At this time in my adult life, I am still a stutterer, but I am able to control it to the point that it is unnoticeable. Today, this former stutterer is a sought-after public speaker on the art of communication in professional practice. Quite a turnabout from my many prior years of embarrassment as a severe stutterer. So what does it take to become an accomplished public speaker? Practice, patience, and perspiration. Let me talk about practice. As I said before, it takes practice, patience, and perspiration to become an accomplished presenter. We must place ourselves in situations that provide opportunities for practice. Those include committee meetings, church organizations, moving on to community and state organizations. Once we polish our manner of presentation and our style of speaking, we can give ourselves a brand, or a topic or subject matter that gives us our brand, whether it be motivational, inspirational, or political. In other words, we must have a subject matter or topic that becomes attached to us, that we are invited to speak about at conferences and conventions. Perhaps you may even want to locate an agent who will locate venues for your presentations. And in your wildest dreams, you become a circuit speaker who travels around the country to give presentations as a result of the grand way you have developed as a public speaker. Next is patience. You must have patience. As I said earlier, there's no such thing as a natural-born public presenter. We may have seen speakers who possess what appears to be a natural, outgoing personality and can speak in a confident and articulate manner. To be a dynamic public speaker, one must develop a number of traits that represent excellence in public speaking that are addressed in this book, and that takes both practice and patience. Perspiration. Third, becoming a dynamic presenter requires a great deal of perspiration. That's where practice and patience comes in. If you think back on my story that describes the years in which I practiced speaking and situations in which I placed myself to become an accomplished public speaker, you have an inkling of what is required. Of course, not all of you are diagnosed as stutterers, but to become one who possesses all the requirements of an accomplished public speaker that are presented in this book, some amount of perspiration is ultimately required. So practice, have patience, and perspire a little as you place yourself in situations that require presenting before an audience. You will be amazed at how your finesse as an accomplished platform speaker will develop. You will be great.